evening, everybody. Please put your hands together and welcome to the stage, me, Lloyd Langford. Hello. Thank you very much for coming to see me. If you've never seen me before, I'll give you a heads up. I have absolutely zero razzle-dazzle. Just gonna be this for an hour. A man telling jokes slowly. Actually talking faster than I normally do because I just did a bump of coke backstage. The show is called Current Mood, and it's about the past year of my life. I've been touring with my partner Anne is a comedian, and we have a 18-month-old daughter called Gwen. And we were in Adelaide recently. We're doing a Fringe show there, and we had a day off, so we went down to the beach in Glenelg, and we went in the sea, and then we came out of the sea, and all of our bags had been stolen. Yeah, and in my bag was my wallet, my mobile phone, my passport. Yeah, and someone said to me, "Why do you take your passport to the beach in Adelaide?" I was like, "I'm not a fuckhead, right? There's a reason. I don't have any other form of photographic identification, so if I need to, like, check into a hotel in Australia or, you know, get, like, a drink in Queensland, I need my passport, you know, and it's kind of annoying because, like, I got to take my passport out of the drawer and I feel like I'm leading it on." I was like, "Oh, are we going somewhere exotic?" I'm like, "No, Brisbane. But Papa needs a beer, so you're coming as well." It's really annoying. I saw the guy, right, that stole our stuff as well. So it was like 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. We're at the beach. There was a guy, he was sat underneath the pier, and he was drinking like a can of pre-mixed Jack Daniels and Coke. Yeah. That should have been the first red flag there, right? That's not a breakfast drink, is it? Jack Daniels and Coke. RTD doesn't stand for ready to dejeuner. I saw the guy, right, and he stole our stuff, and then I went back to the hotel, and I started tracking him on my laptop, right, Find My iPhone. I was like, I'm gonna nail this bastard, right? It was quite exciting until I noticed he was going towards the police station. I was like, this guy's got a big pair of balls on him. He's gonna rub his crime in the face of John Law. And then I realized what actually happened was he ditched the mobile phones and someone had found them like a good Samaritan and they were handing them into the police station, right? Yeah, which was good for me, but like less exciting. We had to give a statement to the police, and I said to Anne, "Look, why don't you go and give the statement? If he's ditched the mobile phones, maybe he's ditched the bags as well, and I don't care about the money, right? But there's important stuff in our bags, you know, like my passport, my Medicare card. I had like a coffee card with like 9 stamps on it. Like shit you're not gonna replace easily, right? So I go down to the beach in Glenelg. I was like, I'll check the bins, right, at the beachfront, not realizing there's approximately 1,500 bins there. But I thought, I can't not look in one bin because maybe the stuff's in that bin, right? So now I'm just furiously going through the bins on Glenelg beachfront. This guy came up to me, he tapped me on the shoulder. He was like, "Hey, mate, can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Aren't you on Have You Been Paying Attention?" I was like, "I am, yeah, but it's not on at the moment, so..." Mainly doing bin stuff right now. May to November, I'm on television, then November to May, foraging. Fucking South Australia. Going through the bins, trying to find jokes for Ed. They might cut that out. Now, we've been trying... It's very difficult traveling with a toddler, you know, as well, right? Because, like, something actually we were told to buy, and we bought, it's revolutionized air travel now with small children. A foldable pram, I don't know if you've seen them. They fold down real small, and you put them in the luggage compartment of the plane, then you get off the plane, and the pram unfolds, and the baby... You're not allowed to keep the baby in the pram when it... But it unfolds and then the baby's in the... It's brilliant. Genius invention. Unless you do what I did, which is forget there is a soiled nappy underneath the pram when you fold it out. Yeah, we arrived in Adelaide Airport. I was like, this is no longer a pram now. It's a lasagna made of shit and metal. I had to make a snap call, right? I just left it in the airport. I was like, I'll buy another one. It'll be easier than untangling that mess. Currently a very confused sniffer dog in Adelaide Airport. He's like, someone's got sweet corn. I'm not sure I want to investigate any further. Gwen, she's 18 months old, right? And all she wants to do at the moment is go up and down steps, right? That's all she's interested in, up and down steps all the time, right? All she wants to do. Like, it was her birthday, like 6 months ago. People are like, first birthday, what should we get her for her birthday? I was like, you know the training montage from the film Rocky, right? She'd fucking eat that up, right? Anything step-based, basically. We're in the playground recently, and she's going up and down the steps on, like, the jungle gym. There was a mother with a baby of a similar age. They're both just going up and down the steps, right? They're having the time of their lives, right? I'm like, great, I can scroll on my phone, right? Step time. And then a boy, I say he's maybe 5 or 6 years old, he wanted to run up the steps, and he just plowed through the middle of the babies, right? He ran through the middle of them. He knocked her baby out of the way, right? And he almost stood on Gwen's head, right? But the other mother, she was closer than me. She kind of jumped in and kind of grabbed him and shimmied him to the side. And he carried on running up the steps, right? The babies were unharmed, but, like, it was a close call, you know? I was a bit, like, shocked. And then I made the mistake of turning to her and going, I wonder who's supervising that little cunt. She replied, that little cunt is my nephew. I was like, well, at least we're in agreement. You still haven't answered my question. Who's in charge? I don't blame him, you know. He's a 5-year-old boy, right? Or a 6-year-old boy. He wants to run up the steps, you know. I always blame the parents, right? I think it's the parents or the guardian's fault, you know. Recently, the three of us were touring. We were in Brunswick Heads, right, New South Wales, and we went somewhere called Mullumbimby. I don't know if you know Mullumbimby. We went to Mullumbimby Farmers Market, right? I saw a woman breastfeeding what I can only describe as a teenage boy. He popped his yo-yo down and he just hopped on, you know? I'm not gonna get into the debate of whether, like, breastfeeding is better than bottle feeding or when you should stop breastfeeding your child, but I think we're all in agreement, right? If they can reach around the back and pop the bra open, they're too fucking old for that shit. I'm spending all my life now, I'm in playgrounds, like every day, right? I'm in a playground. I'm 39 years old, right? There's fuck all there for me. I'm bored shitless in a playground, you know? And, like, we were in a playground recently, Gwen and I, and there was, like, a very large climbing frame, right? And I was like, I'll get to the top of that. And the reason I justified to myself, I was like, I'll have, like, a better vantage point of Gwen, you know? You know, I saw some documentary about, like, in a battle or whatever, always have the higher ground, and I was like, it's better. That's how I'm justifying it to you as well, right? I climb up the top of the climbing frame, I'm at the top of the climbing frame, and she's at the bottom on the ground, you know, doing what she normally does, which is eat bark. I don't know if we got any parents in, but, like, when do they stop eating bark, you know? I'm starting to think maybe I'm not the real dad, you know, like Anne had some illicit one-night stand with a beaver or something. Every time I change a nappy now, it's like a failed game of Jenga down there, you know? Someone said to me the other day, you know, the wombat is the only animal in the world that does cubed shits. I was like, you met my daughter. I think it's really good that you have bark in the playgrounds here in Australia, right? I grew up in quite a rough part of South Wales, and we didn't have bark in our playgrounds when I was growing up in South Wales. I tell you what we had, right? We had gravel. Gravel, yeah. and the local paedophile. Yeah, the local paedophile. We were so ugly, like the paedophiles weren't even willing to travel. They were like, I've seen those kids, that's not worth a bus ride. If I'm risking jail, they gotta be fit. Another joke that may get cut out of the special. Anyway, I'm at the top of the climbing frame. Gwen's on the floor eating bark, right? And Dad walked in, right? I saw him coming from a way off, right? Because of my vantage point. And he had a baby strapped on the front, you know, in like a baby holster. Like a papoose. Like a pouch. You know, like a pocket you slide your baby into. Looks like a skydiving attempt that's about to go very badly wrong. You're like, fucking hell, this instructor's a bit young. This dad, he marched into the park with this baby on the front of him. He walked up to the monkey bars. He grabbed onto the monkey bars like that, and he started doing pull-ups. On the monkey bars, right? I'm at the top of the climbing frame. Gwen's on the floor, right? She looked up at me, looked at him, stood up and just walked towards him. She's like, I've made my decision. You're a fucking loser. Time for an upgrade. It's actually pretty sad because Anne and Gwen live with him now. It's not all bad, though. It's quite near the playground, so if I'm at the very top of the climbing frame, I can still see him on the weekends. She says words, right? Gwen, she's saying words and stuff, but before she said anything, we'd be out with her in the pram, and parents, often mothers, they would come up to us and they would say, oh, has she said anything yet? And I'd say no, and they'd say, oh, just so you're aware, the first word they often say is dada, because it's easier to say than mama, right? It's just easier word for them to say. It's very annoying, obviously, because the mother has a more intimate connection with the baby. She carries the baby for 9 months. She births the baby, then sometimes she breastfeeds the baby, you know, sometimes up until the teenage years, right? They have a closer connection, but the first word is often dada, right? It's really annoying, and I'd be saying, yeah, that does really sound annoying, but like up here, I'd be like, this is great. I want the first word to be dada, right? Now, I kind of crossed the line a bit, so like every time Anne left the house then, I was coaching her to say dada. I was like, dada. Dada. I was like, what was the 20th century art movement formulated as a response to the horror of the First World War? Dada. And then one day, Gwen and I were in the lounge alone together, right? I'm stood up like that, right? She stands up, and she goes like this. She points up at me. I'm like, here it comes. She's gonna say the first word, and it's gonna be dada. And then, clear as a bell, she just went, hedge. Hedge. We got a fucking hedge in the garden, right? Don't get me wrong, it's a good hedge. But I was stood in front of like the French doors, and her first words are essentially, get out of the way of the hedge, babe. You're blocking the view of the hedge. I think I'm reasonably aggrieved that my daughter's first word was hedge. Surely it has to be one of the primary caregivers, you know? In our example, either mama or dada, you know? Not this wide tree we've got in the garden. I feel like I'm in a throuple with Groot. That's not a sentence that would have made any sense 10 years ago. Some people still like, I don't know what you're on about there, mate. No, I feel like I'm constantly in competition with a hedge, you know? I'm like pitting myself against a hedge, because like, I'm a stay-at-home dad. I'm home all the time, right? But, you know, sometimes I have to leave the house. I have to go and get some food shopping or do a gig or try and find a new pram. But the hedge is always there. Like, where am I this evening? I'm in Sydney talking to you guys, right? Where's the fucking hedge? At home. Stealing my thunder. I mean, I've been watching a lot of Teletubbies. Are you into the Tubbies? That's not my choice, you know. Like, we were thinking we need to show Gwen some television programs, and Anne was like, oh, well, let's show the Teletubbies. I remember the Teletubbies from when the Teletubbies first started, you know. It was like a global phenomenon, like a worldwide success, and we found it on TV. I was like, let's watch the Teletubbies, right? And it lulled me into a false sense of security because it starts exactly the same, right? It's, you know, the 4 people in the costumes, and they're, like, running up and down the hill and shit, right? Like, it's the same. The song's the same, but, like, they've changed the Teletubbies. So now, in the Teletubbies themselves have children. Yeah, that was my fault. I was like, I'm not sure we needed to introduce the idea of the Teletubbies fucking into the program. They've got children, right? Still no visible genitalia, you know. They haven't gone that far. They haven't given, like, Tinky Winky a Tinky Winky. Nunu suddenly hasn't got a Nunu, right? I'm thinking it's got to be some kind of internal setup, you know, like a cloaca or something, like a sort of... I haven't given it that much thought, but... What's weird about the children is, right, and there's loads of them as well, right? The Teletubbies are, as they always were, they're people in costumes, right? But the children, they're called the Tiddly-Tubbies. They're computer-generated. So they're not actually physically there. So when they come on the screen, I'm like, this is ruining my belief in the world of the Teletubbies. This makes no sense. The mise en scène is fucked. I don't know, like, I don't know what, you know, they've taken, like, a very successful TV format there, and they've kind of messed around with it. I guess the people that make the program get bored of the program, and they're like, we need to mix it up a bit, but, like, it never works. Like, the most egregious example I can think of this happening, right? Can you remember when Boy George joined the A-Team? No? Do you know Boy George? You know the lead singer of the Culture Club, right? Yeah. Yeah, all right. Do you know the A-Team? You know the A-Team, right? Yeah. In 1972, a crack commando unit was sentenced by a military court for a crime they did not commit. Yep, they promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade into the Los Angeles underground. Still wanted by the government, they exist as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, and if no one else can help you, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team. You remember the A-Team? Yes. Well, Boy George was in the A-Team. All right. You're not supposed to get your phones out, right? During my special taping, get your phone out now and Google, was Boy George in the A-Team? He was in one episode, part of the team, but he was a... No? All right. I got proof. I got proof that it happened, right? Well, have a look, right? That's... On the left, that's Boy George. And that's Mr. T on the right. He doesn't look happy about it, but Boy George, he was definitely in the A-Team for one episode. Yeah. I remember watching that episode of the A-Team when I was a child and thinking, I no longer believe they're a crack commando unit. Don't get me wrong, you know, I still think they're wanted by the government, but that's because Boy George assaulted and falsely imprisoned a sex worker. Do you know that happened? Are you going to leave this and be like, well, I was enjoying the show until he started spreading lies about Boy George? everything I've said about Boy George is true, right? He assaulted and then falsely imprisoned a sex worker. He was jailed in 2009, right? And then he promptly escaped into the Los Angeles. No, he didn't. I really made myself laugh there. Got this entirely the wrong way round. I was Lloyd. Well, he enjoyed it. I don't want to talk about Boy George. I want to talk about the Tiddly-Tubbies, obviously. What's weird is, right, the Teletubbies, they're doing what they normally do, right, which is like sniffing flowers or like running up and down the hill or whatever, right? I don't pay too much attention. And then, like, a stick comes out of the ground like that with, like, a speaker on it, right, to tell them things. And the stick comes out and it's like, time to feed the Tiddly-Tubbies. Yeah, like it's social services or some shit. They're like, you gotta feed them, otherwise they will be taken away from you. You're on your last warning. Then they go into that hill where they live. In the hill, there is a locked room. They unlock the room, right? The Tiddly-Tubbies are just loose in the room, right? They feed them or they give them, they play with them, they watch them sleep or whatever. Then they lock the door, and then they fuck off, and then never mention again in the duration of the episode. I'm like, even as a first-time dad, right? I know that is poor childcare. You don't keep your children in a locked room in a fucking underground bunker. Only go and see them when you're explicitly told to, while you're outside eating custard. Gwen watches like too much television, like I admit it myself, right? We're on like a parents group, and I made a mistake. I was messaging the other parents and I was recommending TV programs, and one of the parents was like, oh, just a heads up, like, we're not trying to show them any television. We don't think it's a bad idea, and we don't want to introduce them to new technology at like such a young age. And I was like, fine, right? I respect that opinion, but then I was thinking, has that always been the case with like children and new technology? Like, keep children away from new technology? Like when the bicycle was invented, were people like, keep the kids away from it, it'll be fucking chaos. They'll be popping wheelies and using spokey dorks and devising grueling mountain races through France. It's gonna be an absolute nightmare. I don't mind introducing children to new technology. I'm from the United Kingdom. United Kingdom used to be called Great Britain, right? And one of the reasons why it was called Great Britain is because we introduced children to new technology. Yeah, it was called the Industrial Revolution. We had those little pricks in the factories. Gwen wouldn't be going up and down steps every day. She'd be going up and down chimneys and earning me a fucking wage. You don't know, the Industrial Revolution is kind of like Lego Masters, but with far more jeopardy. If something broke, like you didn't get like a raised eyebrow off Hamish, you lost your limbs. Too soon for the Industrial Revolution stuff? Or are you still processing the Boy George information? I've had various back and forths with a lawyer about what I am allowed to say and not allowed to say about Boy George. I should actually probably stop talking about Boy George. He's not gonna fucking watch this, is he? It's good to be in Sydney, right? I live in, yeah. One other person in agreement. I live in Melbourne, and it's great, and Anne and Gwen and I, we live in, and it's probably like, it's a bit too trendy for me, the suburb is called Northcote, right? And someone audibly repulsed. Ah. I went to get a coffee the other day, and it was one of those like hole-in-the-wall places where you make your order and then the barista just puts the coffee down on like a ledge, you know? And I was waiting for my coffee, and the barista, he put down someone else's coffee, and he was like, I got a latte for John here. I got a latte for John. And the bloke who was just walking past just went, John? And the barista went, yeah, for John. And he went, I'm John, all day long. Picked it up and fucked off. I was like, he definitely didn't order that latte. But he was called John. So fair fucks, really. Found a way to game the system. I was in the city in Melbourne. I was doing this show, and I was walking down Elizabeth Street, and there's loads of bars there, and there's a woman outside one of the bars. She's trying to get you to come in the bar, right? And as I'm walking past, she goes, hey, mate. I was like, hey, how's it going? She goes, do you want to come in here and have some beers and then throw axes? Yeah, I said, I fucking do, actually. And the fact I do should preclude me from doing so. One of the worst ideas I've ever heard. I grew up in a place called Port Talbot in South Wales, right? Kind of a little bit rough. Like the bars I used to go to, they would check you for weapons on the way into the bar. They wouldn't give you weaponry when you were inside the bar. Absolute chaos. I know, right? If I'd gone out with my mates in Port Talbot and there'd been like an axe throwing bar, there would have been an incident. Definitely, you know? And then I've drawn the short straw, you know, and I've got to ring up, like, Gareth's girlfriend or something and tell her. I'll be like, yeah, I got some bad news, actually, about Gareth. Well, yeah, it was like an argument, but, like, no one would back down. And, look, there's no easy way to sugarcoat this, but, he's been decapitated. Yeah, fucking clean off. Look pretty cool. No, yeah, I don't... No, I'm upset as well, yeah. I've lost the deposit on my axe. Been taken away as evidence or some shit. Look, I was gonna say, there's only 4 of us now. Could you come and pick us up? No, all right, we'll get a cab. Just seems like a bad idea, you know, like lots of men and bladed weaponry and alcohol, you know? It's essentially the Vikings, isn't it? I don't know if we got any history buffs in. I don't know much about the Vikings, but I do not think they were known for their etiquette. There was a lot of pillaging, wasn't it, rather than making dinner and putting the bins out. No empathy or compassion with the Vikings. I guess that's one way of describing it. When your village is on fire and your wife's just had her throat slit, you're like, I don't really think they're people, you know? There's no soft touch with these guys. I genuinely hope that has been recorded. How would you describe Al-Qaeda? Disgruntled, weren't they? Just disgruntled. Glass half empty guys. I don't know if they're still doing this in Sydney, but in Melbourne, right, in the CBD, they're still having anti-vax protests. Oh. Yeah. Anti-vax, I know, right? Because me and Gwen went to one. We went to one, right? It was her idea. She fucking hates her job, right? She's getting jabbed. She's getting jabbed every 6 months. And she's like, we're gonna make a stand against Dictator Dan. That was actually the second thing she said after hedge. She said hedge, and then we're gonna make a stand against Dictator Dan. What happened, right? I take her to the National Gallery of Victoria. We get out at Flinders Street and we walk across the bridge and we're at the gallery. And one day we come out of the station and both the streets are blocked off. There's an anti-vax protest. Men, mainly, with like placards. And there's one guy with a megaphone and he's just like chatting shit. He's just talking whatever comes into his head, right? And I think they pass the megaphone round like every 10 minutes. And I said to Gwen, look, I know you want to go to the gallery, right? But we're gonna listen to this for 15 minutes because Papa's got a new show to write. There'll be some gold in here, let me tell you. We won't even have to pan for it. He'll just hand us nuggets of gold, this guy. That's what happened. He wasn't even talking about vaccinations, right? The guy with the megaphone, this is the first thing I heard him say. He goes, I just want to say at the moment, there is a war going on with Russia, Ukraine. I would just like to say on behalf of myself and everyone else here, we are sending our support to both sides. I was like, mate, that's not how a war works. You're gonna pick a team in a war, you know? Even if you're on the losing side or the wrong side, right? When someone tells you like a war, you know whose side you're on, right? You know, like for me, Russia, Ukraine, like I'd be on Ukraine's side, right? Or, yeah, thank you. Or, that easy choice. Or the Second World War, you like this one. I'm on the Allied side in the Second World War. Or, you know, like the war against drugs, I'm on the drug side, right? You gotta... You know whose team you're on, you know? Then he said possibly the most stupid thing I think I've ever heard in my life, this guy. He goes, yeah. He goes, I myself, I know all about border conflict because I grew up in Albury, Wodonga. I was like, there's a slightly different level of hostility, mate. In fucking Albury, Wodonga. You know, they're not launching missiles at each other, are they? I would describe it as a friendly rivalry. Though having been to both Albury and Wodonga, I think if there was a war, I would send my support to both sides. Is there any way they can both lose this war? I'm not actually supposed to be in Australia, right? I came here. I'm having a nice time, but we were dating, right? Anne and I, we were dating. This before Gwen, and we were like traveling between Melbourne and London, right? Which is where I was living. And then the last time I came over here in February 2020, right? Yeah. People say comedy is all about timing. I really fucked that up, right? I was only supposed to be here for like 6 months or so, and I was supposed to go back to we were supposed to travel back and forth, but obviously COVID happened, and I was kind of like stuck in Australia, you know. I can prove to you I wasn't supposed to be here for very long. I left my flat in London, February 2020. Before I left, I hung out washing to dry. Hung up washing to dry, and we just went back to the UK for the first time, right? July 2022, and let me tell you, right? It was crisp. I could no longer fold the towel in half. I was like, I've accidentally built a partition wall, eh? We went back in July, right, to... my parents hadn't met Gwen, they hadn't met their granddaughter, and I was doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. I was doing a show, and also I had a friend who was getting married, and he knew I was in Australia, and he kind of invited me to the wedding anyway. He said, you're not going to be able to make this. And I was like, I'll come, right? It'll be fun to go to the wedding. And we were back in the UK for 2 months maybe, and then we got back to Australia. I was like chatting to Australian friends, and they were like, how was the UK? Like, what happened? I said, it was pretty eventful, like when I was there. And they were like, what do you mean? I said, not for me personally, just in terms of the United Kingdom in general. They were like, what do you mean? I said, the space of time I was there, we had 3 separate prime ministers. There was a heat wave, and London caught on fire, which is like historically like a bad thing. Not like an Australian heat wave. You were like, that wasn't a heat wave, like that was a Wednesday, right? But like, there was a record high in London of like 26. And part of the city combusted, right? But the major news when we were in the UK was that the Queen died. Yeah, the Queen. Some people finding that out for the first time. That was big news in the Northern Hemisphere. Now, the Queen died, and she died, and then she went on tour. I was like, she's got a fucking good agent. Like, if I die tonight, right, all my tour shows are getting pulled. No, she was playing all the big rooms, and one of the few shows with less movement than this one. She toured around the UK, and no, it was a real tragedy, the Queen dying, for anyone interested in watching anything on television for a fortnight. She was in Westminster Hall in London, and the body was laid in state, and you could pay your respects, right? 6 days the body was laid in state. You could visit and pay your respects. And me and Gwen, we're in my flat in London, and Anne and Gwen both have COVID, right? They got COVID from a soft play centre. We can't leave the flat, and Anne said to me, you know the Queen's lying in state? I said, yeah. She goes, if you go on the BBC and push the red button on the remote control, they're live streaming her lying in state 24 hours a day, uninterrupted, for the next 6 days. You can watch it on TV 24 hours a day for the next 6 days, right? And I was like, who's watching that? She goes, come on, we both got COVID, we can't leave the flat, let's just put it on, I want to see what the hall looks like, right? Just put it on for like 5 minutes, and then we can watch a movie or something. I was like, great, right? Put it on. 8 hours later, I was like, where's Gwen? We haven't had any dinner. Fuck, we haven't had any breakfast. What's happening? Best television I've ever seen in my life. I watched it 8 hours a day for 6 days. It was incredible, right? It was just people watching. It was like a static camera in the hall, and you know, people just filing past the coffin. The thing that salted to me was, very early on in the stream we put on, there was a guy walked past the coffin, and he was eating a cheese string. I was like, wait, have some respect. This isn't the time for peelable dairy. Take your baseball cap off, or at least turn it round. Come on. It's the Queen. It was completely like the ambient noise in the room, right? But every now and again, they have a guy called Hugh Edwards who does the news on the BBC. He's a Welsh guy. He was like the top journalist in charge of the coverage. He would come on and he would give you a piece of information, right? Like a little, you know, if there was someone important walking past the coffin or whatever, or something about the changing of the guards or whatever. One time he came on, he goes, ladies and gentlemen, I've just been told that the queue now to see the Queen is 8 miles long. So if you join the queue at this very instant, it will take you 24 hours before you get to the coffin. I know there are people traveling from all over the UK. I've been told there are people traveling from all over the world. Just so you know, if you join the queue now, it is 8 miles long. It'll take you 24 hours to get to the coffin, right? I was watching that. I was like, I wouldn't queue for 24 hours to see a live Queen. You know, if fucking King Charles, right, was on Bondi tomorrow, And they're like, do you want to go and meet King Charles, right? He's on Bondi Beach, right? You can meet him tomorrow, but like there's a 24-hour queue first. I'll be like, not a sniff. I'll be frank, right? If a member of the royal family was in my garden, I don't think I'd look out the window. Unless it was Andrew, obviously. I'd secure Gwen and then alert the authorities. Leave them alone, Andrew. They're just gnomes, you sick fuck. They're gnomes. Stay away from the hedge. I'll be honest, right? If Jesus Christ himself came back tomorrow, the second coming of Christ, right? The King of Kings, the holiest of holies, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, right? If he returned tomorrow and due to some kind of admin error, he was in Sydney. That was the first stop. Sydney, he's at the Opera House doing a meet and greet. And, you know, you can go down there and you can have a selfie or he'll sign the New Testament. You know, you give him one fish, he'll give you back 3 fish. He's doing all the classics, right? He hasn't toured for 2,000 years, no new stuff. Just the hits, right? He'd do all that and then he'd walk on the harbour, right? The gold, right? But you had to queue for 24 hours. I'd be like, I'll watch it on the news. I don't give a shit, you know? Would you have queued for 24 hours to see the Queen? No, it's just a dead woman in a box, isn't it? AKA the magician's nightmare. A lot of fun doing a magic show. You're like, how's he gonna get out of this one? You better have a lot of doves in that hat. People are getting restless. So, the rumour in the UK at the time was that she wasn't in the coffin, right? That they couldn't risk having her in the coffin. And one guy, he queued for 24 hours. He got up to the coffin and he was like, I'm gonna have a look. Right? He ran up the steps, right? Fucking Gwen would have loved it. She was desperate to go. I was like, shut up, we got steps at home. He ran up the steps and he tried to flip the lid off the coffin, right? But he got, like, tackled to the ground. And, like, that was the only time in the 6 days where the 24-hour stream was cut, right? When they had to deal with this guy. I was, like, thinking, like, you know, they could have put to bed all the rumour and supposition about her not being in the box, right? Just put her in, like, a clear Perspex coffin. Not everyone on board with that. All right, like, put her in, like, a normal coffin, but there's, like, a hole cut in the side. Not compulsory, but if you wanted to, you could reach in. Yeah, you're like, look, I got a coin here, it feels exactly the same. There's the metal hat, there's the chin, right? Definitely her. You'd only want to do that, like, day 1, you know? She's in there for 6 days. By day 6, you'd be like, oh, I think I've got a bit with me there, actually. I might eBay that. Here, give me a cheese string wrapper. I want to save something. Someone wrote a review of my comedy saying I want to abolish the monarchy, right? No, that's not the case. I used to want to abolish the monarchy. I think I've mellowed with age somewhat now. I think we can have a monarchy, absolutely fine, but it should be like the olden days of the monarchy in that they can still be executed. You want to be a king or queen, fair enough, right? But run the risks, you know? So, like, Harry's, like, saying, right, I'm leaving the royal family. Me and Meghan Markle are moving to America. They're like, absolutely fine, mate. But before you go, right, we're going to throw you a big party. It's going to be at the Tower of London. You just look out for the guy with the black hood on. and he'll show you the ropes. I'm enjoying myself in Australia, right? But we live, like I said, we live in Northcote now. We have a bit more space, but during the kind of mad kind of Melbourne lockdowns, Anne and I, we were in like a one-bed flat together. You had to walk through the bedroom to get to the bathroom. Like, it was pretty intense, you know? I don't know if there's anyone in like a long-distance relationship. Yeah, like... They sound like they're really enamored with a relationship. I just think, like, sometimes, like, the stuff the other person does every day, you're just like, this is my life now. And, like, something that you would maybe tolerate in, like, a friend or an acquaintance, someone you see, like, semi-regularly, but, like, every day for the rest of your life, you're like, fuck. I said this the other night, and a woman in the crowd goes, yeah, like breathing. I was like, I don't think that relationship is salvageable, right? I tell you what Anne's one is, right? This just annoys me on a personal level. You know, like a cheese grater, like a normal $10 four-sided Kmart cheese grater, right? Whenever she's grating cheese, she always uses the small whole side. Someone the other night, a woman in the middle of the crowd, hadn't said a peep out of her all show. After I said that, just went, unacceptable! It doesn't create cheese, right? It creates this kind of fine, powdery mist that gets absorbed into the atmosphere before it gets anywhere near my mouth, you know? I'll come home from a gig and there'll be like a mountain of white powder on a bench top. I'll be like, oh, we're in for a big night, do we? She's like, no, spaghetti bolognese. Because I'm nearly 40, right? My taste buds, they're fucked, you know? I can't taste anything smaller than a 50-cent coin, you know? I don't want the cheese to melt in my tongue, you know? I want it to kind of pull my hair and choke me. Even trying to buy cheese in Australia, I find it difficult. I went to the supermarket to buy cheese, right? The exact same brand had two different cheeses, right? One of the cheeses was called Tasty, the other cheese was called Extra Tasty. I was like, who the hell is buying the Tasty? Even they themselves are saying the other cheese is tastier. During that big lockdown, right, we watched so much television, and there was a big news story on the TV, and it was about a lady called Melissa Caddick, right? You know Melissa Caddick, right? If you don't know the story, she pretended to be like a financial investor, but she set up like a Ponzi scheme, and she ripped people off of like millions of dollars, right? And then on the day she was supposed to be arrested, she disappeared, right? And every night we're watching TV, and they keep trailing this story on the news. They're like, coming up tonight, an exciting new twist in the Melissa Caddick case. Oh, coming up tonight, we've got an explosive interview with Melissa Caddick's husband, right? Coming up tonight, you'll never guess what's happened in the Melissa Caddick case, right? One night, Anne turned to me and she was like, do you want to know what I think? I said, 100%. You've done absolutely no research. You've got no background in criminal investigation. You're only acquainted with the bare facts of the case, and yet you've developed a theory. Lay it on me, I want to hear it. She disappeared, right? And then about 6 months later, like 500 k's away, her foot was like found on a beach, right? And, they DNA tested it. She didn't have her name written in her shoe. And then the police came and they said, look, she's clearly fallen in the water in Sydney, and she's, fallen foul of some kind of aquatic mischief. And they weren't that florid. They were like, she dead. So the case is closed, right? Anne goes, no, that's not what happened. I said, what happened then? She goes, she had a tip-off, right? She fled before she was arrested. She lay low for 5 or 6 months. Then she went down to that beach. She cut off her own foot, put it on the beach, and now she's a fugitive from justice, right? Footloose and fancy-free. The second most evil one-footed person in Australian culture after Adam Hills. I was like, that's a great theory. Like, I enjoy it. Like, but I don't think it's easy to disprove. She's like, what do you mean? I said, you just go down to the beach, right, on the day they found the foot and just like check the footprints, you know? There'd be like 2 sets of footprints up to the foot, then there'd be like a fair bit of blood splatter. Then there'd be 1 footprint away from the foot. Maybe like a divot where she's fallen over. Staying on the foot theme, I got a friend in the United Kingdom, right? And she's on dating apps. I've never been on a dating app, right? But she was like telling me that she's talking to this guy on the app and they've been talking for a very long time and they hadn't met yet, but the conversation they were having was getting more fruity, I guess, like a bit more spicy, right? Yeah. Sexual of nature. They were talking about what they did and didn't like in the bedroom, etc., etc. Then he sent her a message that so kind of upset her that she screenshotted it and she sent it to me and she was like, this guy's a pervert, right? And I'll tell you the message he sent her. Now, bear in mind, they're talking about what they do and don't like in the bedroom, right? So he sent her a message saying, how would you feel about me putting my toe inside you? Yeah. Toe, like a finger on your foot. T-O-E, toe. She was like, he's a pervert, right? And I was like, I don't think so. She's like, what do you mean? I said, look, I've never done it myself, right? But I don't think it's that bad. She was like, he's a pervert. I was like, think about it, like a toe, right? It's not more perverted than a cock, is it? Like he doesn't even have to take his trousers off. It's actually quite civilized, you know? Some people are not on board. Next time you're in the supermarket, right, get your toe out, then get your cock out. See which one gets you the most grief. I said to her, obviously, like, don't do it, right? But I said, it's not that bad. I said, think about it. Worst case scenario, he puts his penis inside you. You could have, like, a sexually transmitted infection or unwanted pregnancy or something like that. I said, worst case scenario, he puts his toe inside you. 2 to 3 days later, you will give birth to a piece of blue fluff. I was talking about this on stage in Perth, and a guy put his hand up. He was like, I got a question. I was like, I bet you do. I said, what's your question, mate? He goes, which toe? I said, he didn't specify the toe, but I'll take a guess, right? I reckon the big one. You know, if I had 4 decreasingly shorter penises next to my OG penis, why would I be utilizing any of the shorter peni? It's got to be the big one, right? Or the little one. It's got to be an end one. Because if it's one of the middle ones, then, like, other toes are elsewhere. I was thinking about it. Like, I don't think it's perverted, but I was thinking it's a weird thing because if you're having sex with someone in, like, a regular way, like a normal way, like with your genitalia, you're very close to that other person and you're touching them, parts of your body are touching parts of their body, right? It's a very intimate act. Whereas... I would argue there is a distance there. Both physically and emotionally. I thought maybe it's like a COVID-safe thing, you know? Yeah, I'm gonna be 1.5 meters apart, yeah. That's not my idea, actually. Blame Dan Andrews. That's the way I would... I mean, I've never done it, but, like, that's the way I would do it if I was doing it, you know? Like, this is me. And then they're like... Or maybe... That's the way, you know? I think other positions would be weird. Well, weirder. You know, like me on top. Oh, you know, you could have, like, them on top. You've really got to have a lot of faith in your ankle strength in that scenario. I've had a woman sit on my face before, but it's quite a wide face, you know. It provides for equal weight distribution, right? But I think the heft of any regular lady would absolutely knacker my ankle. I guarantee you will not hear that phrase in any other comedy special. The final thing I wanted to talk to you about is that Anne, I, and Gwen, we were in the garden around Christmas time, right? We're having a barbecue outside, right? We have to eat a lot of our meals in the garden so Gwen can be close to the hedge. I feel like I'm co-parenting with foliage. And there's a wasp in the garden, and Anne was getting really, like, worked up about it. She was like, there's a wasp here. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, leave it alone. Like, it's fine. And she's like, no, I'm really afraid of wasps, right? And I was like, what do you mean you're really afraid of wasps, right? You grew up in Australia, you know, AKA Satan's petting zoo. You got the worst animals in the world here, you know? 19 of the 21 deadliest snakes, poisonous spiders, sharks, crocodiles. Like, don't be afraid of a wasp, right? She made a fair point. She's like, yeah, if we're in the garden in Northcote having a barbecue and we get attacked by a shark, we got other problems. And the wasp, it came away from her, it came nearer me, and I was like, fine, she'll calm down. No, she got more upset because I was drinking a beer, and she was like, put your thumb over the hole. I was like, what? She goes, cover the hole in your can. I was like, why is that? She goes, the wasp, attracted by the sugar in the drink, will fly into the hole, unseen by you. You'll go and take a sip out of the can. The wasp will be transferred from the can into your throat. The wasp will become confused and agitated, will start stinging your esophagus. Your throat will swell up, cutting off the oxygen supply to your brain. You will suffocate, and you will die. I was like, I think we got different wasps in the UK. They're just kind of annoying at a picnic, you know? None of this Mission Impossible shit. Taking you down from the inside. Trojan horse motherfuckers. I said, what are you on about? She goes, yeah, it happened all the time when I was a kid, like growing up in Australia. Every Australian person knows about it. So I started asking them. And they fucking don't. And I kept saying to her, they don't know about it. And she was like, no, it definitely happened. I remember it when I was a kid growing up in Australia. I was like, I love you so much. I believe you. I'll look into it. And I hold my hands up. She's absolutely right. I'm wrong. It did happen when she was a child growing up in Australia. It happened on an episode of Home and Away. So it did not happen. Now I'm worried she's getting all of her information from, like, Aussie soaps of the 90s, you know? We'll be having, like, a lovely evening stroll along the river together, and she's like, oh, don't stand too close to the edge. I'm like, why is that? She's like, well, Harold Bishop fell in the river in Melbourne, and he got floated all the way to Brisbane, and he lost his memory. And I'm like, oh, he fell in the river in Melbourne, and he floated all the way to Brisbane, and he lost his memory, and she's like, yeah. I was like, well, I hope he remembered his fucking passport. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming along to the show. Good night.